Hello, I'm Bree, and welcome to the first episode of Bronze House. I am so excited to be the creator and host of a much-needed television talk show. I am passionate about making a difference in the lives of all people, but specifically people of color. Bronze House is here to empower ethnic millennials in having bona fide communication pertaining to personal, community, national, and world events. There's no secret that ethnic people continue to get mistreated. So Bronze House is here to close those race barriers in America. We are going to address issues from religion, academics, economics, political, and other much needed conversation. On today's show, we will be discussing the upcoming presidential and local election that's going to affect everyone entirely, especially ethnic millennials. Our special guests consist of varied walks of life and political views. Let's meet them. We have Shayna Hill, Donnell Peak, Charmaine Webster, and Savon Hagans. So Shayna, this first question is going to go to you. What do you believe is the most important issue that the presidential candidate must address in the election in order for you to make a decision?
I'm going to have to say with the whole terrorist thing that's going on right now with ISIS, I feel like that's like very important, because if we have a president that's, going to go to war with another country than actually, try to get a treaty or talk anything through with them, then that's going to be like affecting like not just the United States but other countries as well. And I feel like that's like the most like threatening thing right now.
Yeah. Savon, would you agree? Or what do you think is the most important thing for you to make a vote?
I feel like for me, the most important thing to get my vote, honestly, is to really like stop all like, I guess, the hate around our society right now, especially due to like, I guess, ISIS and like the whole like Muslim problem, I guess. I guess like there's so much hate and fear about, the whole ISIS thing, I just wish that, everyone would just like, I don't know, I'm messing up. Yeah.
That's
all right.
Okay.
No, I just feel like that with the whole like, I guess like Muslim problem, I feel like that no one's like really taking account to like, why I guess ISIS is happening, I guess. And I guess we're like bombing their country all the time. And then I guess, like as Donald Trump is like playing on the fear of Americans to really just vote for him, honestly, to like say, oh, I'm going to keep you safe. And really, in all honesty, it's just making that kind of like assumption is like making Americans like hate Muslims like every day. And like working in like retail and stuff like that, like Muslim people, like they like talk different and like they act different. Like it's like they don't want to like, make me angry or something like that. Like I want to do something to them. And so, I just feel like we need to like tear down like these walls of like, fear and hate, honestly. Like that's where my vote lies. And, to me, both of them, honestly, aren't really like my ideal, presidential candidate. But, I guess if I had to pick, it would honestly be Hillary, honestly, yeah.
So do you think a lot of people are nervous with ISIS and what's going on? Do you feel like it's getting closer and closer to home? And how do you think, with some of you going to school and going to work, working with a lot of Muslims and going to school with a lot of Muslims, how do you think they feel?
I think it comes down to understanding. Because I have a friend right now, she's actually in Baghdad. She's from Baghdad, Iraq. And she recently went back for a few weeks. And she said that she's very embarrassed of her culture, especially in America, because of what our media has done to people of Islamic faith. And I think it's unfair to them because we are the ones who are funding a lot of these ISIS terrorists. If you check to a lot of these, a few months ago, they actually called these terrorist groups in Middle East and Syria, and they found that a lot of their guns and a lot of their bombs were American made. So that makes me question, why are we giving terrorists that we're trying to stop? Why are we giving them our weapons? And if we want to stop that, why don't we just take them away and dry them out? You know, that would be my concern. And like I said, for all the people, because I work with a lot of Muslims, and you know, at my work, and like I said, I don't think it's fair to them that we are trying to use their faith as a way of what they did to us as black folk, you know.
So do you feel that there is some type of relation with Muslims and black people or people of color?
I do. It might be slightly different because of our culture or where we come from, but you know, back in 400 years ago, maybe even way before that, we were being slaughtered and lynched, and you know, we as black folk, we were being exposed. And now that they're still doing that now, especially with you see the police brutality. But what they're doing to people of Islamic faith is they're using what they're trying to, it's really hard to explain. They're trying to get people to go against that. And by doing that, make terrorists and make people on the media, when people see that, they're like, oh, I don't want to be a part of that anymore, you know, because it's fear. So I think that's a very concerning thing to me.
Yes, Shayna.
I believe that there has been a problem with that, though. Like even before all of this with the ISIS, there's been a problem with people looking at Muslims like it's like just a stereotype. Like that's just what it was created. I think the real problem lies with the actual threat to like people getting hurt on U.S. soil. We having unnecessary wars because of someone would rather be angry and turn us against what they tell us is the enemy, rather than sitting down and making treaties seem like that they're not important, like they didn't do anything, when you know we got our people back because of those treaties, regardless of what it cost us. Like it's just the fact that those were Americans, and we're going to fight for every American to come back with them having like prisoners and stuff. Like just because we pay like a certain amount, I don't think that we should look in the past to see what was the problem and to like blame anything. If it's not a blame game, I think the thing is to just move forward and try to come with solutions to the problem that we face now currently with the ISIS situation. What are they going to do right now? Can't like and who has said what they're going to do? Right.
Yeah. Yes. And do you, whomever would like to answer, do you think that there is a candidate who has sat down and said in front of everyone, this is what we're going to do, especially with the Radic and with the Muslims and with people of color, these cops, the brutalities that's going on? Has anyone sat down and said it in front of the television screen what they're going to do?
Like during the presidential election, they did ask a question, and it was, they asked that question, and Trump went to, stop and frisk, like that, like how that that was effective and it wasn't unconstitutional, and he just went on with that. And I felt like, and then like he said, there should be more police officers there should be more law enforcement. There should, that was his solution, and I don't think that was the correct solution that would actually help. Then that makes me feel like it's a barrier between me and Trump, because now it's like, well, you don't really know how to effectively deal with the problem. So how do you how could we ever relate? How could I ever go in your direction? As far as Hillary's she's community, built the community, and I think that's would be way more effective than just putting more law enforcement and stopping frisk. But I do believe that there should be people should obey the law, and there should be consequences for people not obeying the law at the same time. But there should be stronger communities, and I think Hillary just says that.
Yeah.
So I think to answer your question about is there a presidential candidate who has a policy that will address what's going on with ISIS or police brutality, I think first of all that all of our presidential candidates are ignoring the fact that part of the issue with fighting ISIS is that you are dealing with an ideology, and you're dealing with issues that you're dealing with cultures and with countries that have a real culture of hate and fear going on. So the stuff that's going on in Syria is also being fed by ISIS. And so part of ISIS, it was the same with Hitler. They were getting folks who felt like they were no one. That's why they're able to attract folks here in America. And if we continue to demonize people and make them feel like they don't belong in a country or the world, then those folks are going to be attracted to a group that tells them that they're valuable and that they have a purpose. And I think that part of the issue with fighting ISIS is not just fighting with drones and even diplomacy, but also dealing with the fact that you are dealing with a religious sect that is taking their book of faith literally, beheading people because they don't follow the law, or beheading folks because it's not in line with their text, and they're reading it literally. And when you have that sort of religious fanaticism tied with a culture of fear, then you have perfect storm for someone to create a terrorist group. And until we're really able to deal with both how we demonize folks and with the religious fanaticism, we're not going to address the ISIS problem, because as long as that's there, then the next ISIS will come. So it's not just about killing folks, because you can't kill hate with a drone. You have to take out hate with love.
So what would you recommend, and I'm asking all four of you, what would you recommend that the president do with ISIS? Like, what is one option that they could resolve this issue?
I feel like, no one really asks, like, what, why, like, ISIS is doing, like, what they're doing, like, and as far as, like, a president saying, like, oh, this is what we're gonna do, no one takes in, like, context clues of, like, what ISIS, like, talks about, like, as far as, like, I feel like, like with these, like, terrorist groups and stuff like that, they just, like, really they're just, like, seeking attention, like, as far as, like, going and, like, doing, like, the beheadings and stuff like that. As Americans, like, we see that, and, as them trying to get their point across, and we, like, tear down what, the reasons, or, or like we tear down, like, the religion as a whole, but we never, like, ask, like, why, and then we kill so many, like, Muslims and, like, Syrians, like, over there.
Innocent?
Yeah, innocent. And, like, we'll be like, oh, well, that was just, a casualty of war, and, like, but, like, let, ISIS do that to us, and it's like, oh, well, that's, that's horrible, like, we have to attack them now. And, like, I'm just looking for, like, as Americans, like, as, like, a presidential candidate, honestly, I'm, like, looking for, I feel like we should, like, back out of, like, a lot of these countries, like, of, like, the reasons, like, why we're there. Like, we'll say, like, there's a reason, they'll tell us, or the masses, a reason, and which is probably isn't even the reason why they're over there. And then, like, they'll talk about, oh, well, ISIS killed, 80 people, but, like, no one, like, looks at the facts of how many people, like, we've killed, or, like, Russia or Britain has killed, or, like, trying to find ISIS and, like, destroying towns and killing all these civilians over just, like, an area which they thought, ISIS was in. So at the end of the day, I just feel like that we should honestly, like, take a step back to see, like, what they want, like as far as, like, crimes here, we're always like, oh, we don't want to negotiate with people, and I feel like that's the problem. Like, people are doing things because there's a reason, like, a lot of terrorists are like, well, I just want America to, like, stop bombing our country, and they'll say that, and we'll be like, no, well, and, that's, I think that's the problem. Like, we're, like, deaf to people's ears, as far as, like, other countries, and as far as, like, black people in America, honestly, too.
Yeah, I think to piggyback off a little bit what he was saying, I think we really need to, like I said earlier, we really need to stop funding these groups. Because if you, in our media, they show it all the time, but a lot of people don't pay attention to it. You know, we train people in Syria. They say it's rebels or people of their community, but we really know it's these terrorist groups. But they don't want to admit that. And as an American taxpayer, like we don't even have to go into that. 54%, and you guys can go look it up yourself. 54% of our taxes that we pay go to those wars. And as an American taxpayer, I'm sick of tired of my money that I work hard for every week, you know, to go and fighting for what's the purpose? We trying to get oil? I mean, come on, we've gone beyond. We're trying to go into renewable energy. We're trying to go all electric. Like, why are we still using, especially Africa, which is a whole nother continent that we shouldn't even be a part of? Why are we trying to take something that is theirs and make it to our own? You know what I mean? To try to gain what I think capitalism, because really that's what this country is. We're here to make money, and I don't think that's fair to the American taxpayer, you know, because we work hard. You know, people work 40, 50, 60, even 80 hours a week just to, you know, support their families, their friends, their, you know, people around our community. You know, I don't think that's fair. So I think we should just take back what we were given, what we were given away, and dry them out.
And a lot of times in different homes and different communities, Donnell, they're not aware that our tax money is what it's being funded for. They just know that there's something missing on their check. So we have to do our job in our communities to inform our people where our money is going, because our voices can be heard. And that brings me to the next question. Do you think, as a person of color, especially black male and female, that your voice matters? We'll edit that out.
But I think that it is, it's important to know the bigger picture. I think it's very important for each individual, not even of color, just everyone in general, to go out and do their own research and don't rely on, I call them outside forces, to give you information. Not saying that they're not accurate, not saying that it's not true, but it gives you more of a sense of closure when you find out for yourself. And I think a lot of people need to start doing that, reading books or going online on their own, you know, actually going out and asking questions, because that's a lot of people are afraid of, to ask questions, because we feel like people are going to come after us, you know, which in some cases possibly, but you know, that's a risk you're going to have to take, you know, being in a society where this election is really crucial. Like, I never thought when I was 16, 17, I would have to worry about where a country is going. Like, that scares me to death, you know, like, because a lot of people are like, oh, well, I'm just going to choose the worst of the evil. You're still choosing evil. Like, you know, no matter if it's like you're eating a Snickers with stuff in it. Let's just put it that way. And it looks good on the outside, and you know, it looks glamorous. I know a lot of people like Snickers, such as I, but once you take the bite and you taste how nasty it is, then you start realizing, oh, it's too late now. It's already in your mouth, unhealthy. You know. So yeah, you know.
Would anyone like to comment about the question that I asked? Do you think, as a person of color, especially a black male or female, your vote or voice matters in this election? Or has it ever mattered?
I would like to think that it does. This is just because, like, you know, people fought hard for our vote. It should matter. Some people, you know, fought for it. Therefore, it's important. People shouldn't take it as something that, you know, they don't have to do, because, you know, it was a point in time where they couldn't do it
and risk their lives.
And exactly. So for someone to say it's not important, obviously there's just a disconnect between them and the political like aspect of the world. And that's why, just like what he was saying, well, I feel like that people are not going to vote if they don't feel like it's going to affect them. Like, if it's not going to affect them, why? So I feel like people should take the initiative and, you know, not even like, you know, something major or big, but just like, here's the facts. You know, this is what they're going to do. This is what they're going to do. Which ones line up to what you want in your life? And then that's how they make that decision. And I feel like everyone should get one of those to make it easier for them to vote. So therefore, they, you know, they'll be a little educated on whether or not they're just not going there and voting just because their neighbor is voting for someone, or just because everybody they know is voting for the certain person. And then like people get on, Facebook, just like people get on Facebook and read all the things that people say, and you don't know if that stuff is true. And then you just believe it, and like people should go out and they should do their own research and figure out exactly what is real. Don't just believe it just because you want to believe it. You need to only believe the facts. That's what
So I think our voice matters. It always matters. There's just two things that kind of go in that with me. The first one is it matters. It's a value, but does it have an impact? And I think that's what makes people not vote or not choose to participate, because they feel like that their voice won't make a difference. And people are looking to make an impact. But then I think the second thing is, as Black folks, we have to think about the number of people who can't vote because of voter disenfranchisement. And so when you get with issues like the state of Ohio, they are purging votes every year. So if you don't vote every year, your vote will be purged. So that's one way of saying that your vote doesn't matter. We have folks who have felonies who can't vote. And so does our voice matter when percentages of our population can't vote? To who? Obviously not the American public. So we have to do something about that if we have all these folks who cannot vote. In many prisons that are full up in this country, they're in counties, let's think about Ohio, where no one Black lived there but in jail, right? So they're from Hamilton County and Montgomery County, but then the jail is somewhere in London, Ohio. That's where my grandpa is now, and hasn't been able to vote since the year I was born because of the because of the laws of this state. And so if we say that our voices matter and that our votes matter, then we have to do something to make sure that all of our voices matter and that there's not a selection of some mattering and some not. Because think about how many Black men and women cannot vote in this country.
I feel like, to me, like, I don't know. I just feel like, of course, our voice matters, and like what we have to say. And our votes do count. Like, that's what our grandparents and Martin Luther King fought for, and other civil rights leaders fought for, of course. But as far as as time as a whole of us being in this country and to now, I feel like our voice matters, but at the same time, do we really have power? It's like, yes, our voice matters to us, and to I guess I can't even really say to everyone as America as a whole, but I feel like we've never really had power. To me, I guess my take on the whole our voices mattering and as power, I feel like we don't have any power at all. We can't get the same loans. We can't get the same loans. We don't get the same education. Just being in Dayton, Ohio, I went to Stiver School for the Arts, but you're not going to tell me someone from Dunbar had the same education as me. It's not going to happen. So, to me, I personally feel this is, until we do have power, I feel this is really kind of a white person versus white person kind of thing. I have white people who I feel who are family to me, and they want to see change, and they're going to schools, to be politicians and stuff like that, to seek out that change, and but they have family members or just people on their Facebook, when Black people are well, look at the statistics, well, but well, Black Lives Matter, but there's we'll never really see progress, honestly, until everyone is at the same thing, same opinion.
I feel as though that with the whole everybody has to be able to vote, that's the same, it's just not, that's not even, I mean, yeah, the institute, the prison is, what it is right now, how it's classified, trying to get more Black people in prison, but at the same time, white felons can't vote either. So it's just that I think that's just kind of different. And then when you think about the 2008 election, the turnout of the Black people community voted, that really made a difference. The things that don't affect I feel like people should vote more at the state level and their actual district level, and that's when they're going to see the power. I feel like there should be more communities for like African American rich programs that'll like form and do something within the certain community. I feel like that's more of a community type of problem than just like, because I mean they're just, because I mean like we saw the 2008 election, like it was, that made a big difference.
Right, but I'm going to push back against that, because black people make up 13% of this country, but we make up 40% of the prison population. So our voice is being disproportionately affected by the fact that felons cannot vote. Then you can't vote once you leave, not just when you're in there.
Right,
In this country, this is not the way it is in every country.
But
it's not, period. That is a choice that America has made to disenfranchise people from being able to participate in full citizenship. Just because you commit a crime, I mean, who gets to decide what you don't get to have once you commit a crime? Who gets to decide what is valuable and what is not valuable? If you can work and make somebody some money, which prisoners do, because they have to, that's why we have the prisoner industrial complex, then you should be able to vote. Because somebody's making a profit off of you, then you should at least be able to have some say in your life in some way, shape, or form.
I'm not saying that they shouldn't have the right to vote, but what I'm saying is that we are still, like us by ourselves, we are still powerful without that. We don't need that to make a difference. We just need more strong leaders in our community that's going to, that can raise up and represent, because those people in prison, they're not going to, the people in prison they need people who's going to represent them, so therefore the whole community needs to rise up and help them.
And they're a part of our community, and they can rise up. They're not completely powerless. I just think there's ways that we can all own our own power, and even what he was saying, like it's about power. You know, my pastor always says that power comes in two ways: people or money. And so how do we want to get power? And so he oftentimes like doesn't even care about the vote because, well, my former pastor, not my current pastor, but he's like, you know, there are communities that don't care about voting at all, but they have built themselves up with their economics. And so how do we want to gain power? And I think the reason why voting matters so much to us is because historically that power has been taken away from us. And so we want to be able to have full participation, which also includes the power to say, I don't want to participate. But at least but there are still just so many laws that are made to even keep us from being able to do that, along with education, along with economics, along with the criminal justice system.
But what I'm saying, like one way to just rise up against that is to have the correct people to represent you, to make those actions happen. Therefore, they can vote, and therefore, so it starts with building the community, and when you have people that can rise up and change those actual laws, then that's when they're going to make a big difference. That's when we're going to seize more power. I'm just saying where you can start at, because trying to control the laws about institutions and jails is, I mean, that's in this society. I mean, the way that it's set up now, it would be impossible unless you have people really in there that can really change that, and people who really care about changing it.
I feel like the community, like, of leaders that you want, you know, I feel like that's not going to happen until, like, black people, like, we need self-healing, you know, like we're our own crabs in a bucket, you know, like, we tear each other down, like, all the time, and, you know, like, and I feel like that's our biggest problem, you know, like when we see, like, you know, like, white people or just, like, or Asians, you know, or, you know, like, Muslims, you know, like, they're not, like, tearing each other down like super hard, you know, like how we do, you know, like we'll see someone like getting the education or like doing better or trying to be leaders, and well, we don't want to hear that, you know, like, you know, as a whole, like, you know, I just feel like we won't get anywhere. Like, I feel like, you know, no one talks about like the therapy like black people really need as a whole, you know, like
post-traumatic slave disorder.
Yeah, like, you know, like, as far as, like, trying to, like, do better and, you know, as a whole, and, you know, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I got it. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that the way that the way that the media like demonizes people in prison, they make it seem like the people in prison aren't even like people. Like the people are just like they're supposed to be there, the thugs, just like the riots and everything that's going on. I mean, I was listening to a talk show host, and I was trying to decide whose side he was on, and then it became clear. And when he started calling the people who were forming, you know, and rioting and stuff, they were calling them thugs and all types of things like that. And it's just like, no, the thugs are not the people who's out there fighting for our rights. The thugs don't care about our rights. So the people that's sitting up here caring about everything, these are the people who are our leaders. These are the people who, but they're calling those type of people thugs, and they're thinking that, you know, they're thinking less of them when that's not the case. The thugs don't care. The thugs are somewhere out. I don't know what they're doing, but they're not fighting for our rights. That's it.
Yeah. I feel like, you know, as far as like black people or people in color going to jail, like disproportionately a lot more than any other race, you know, I feel like with, you know, trying to get them to care, even as if they didn't even have like a felony, like just them being like black and then having something on their record as a whole, they're not getting jobs. And so when we look at that and then they're like, well, why don't you care about like voting or like doing better? You know, like of course they're gonna like revert back to like, you know, well, I'm gonna just look at the streets and just say like, oh, I don't care, you know. I'm like, but you know, we refuse, like, or just jobs refuse to like hire people who have like, you know, black sounding names, or, you know, so it's like, you know, and then if you have like any of the slightest of like, you know, jail time, you know, that's, you might as well just count it out, honestly. And then with the felony, it's like, it's really damn near impossible to like get a job as a whole.
So who do you take that up with? Do you take that up with the president? Do you take that up with the House of Representatives, Congress, or do you start working within your own community?
You know, I think that's a really hard question to answer, because if you look at our political system, it's a problem, and it needs to be fixed. And this has been a problem since the Constitutional has been written, since George Washington. And personally, I think it is a great step to have people come together in our community and protest. But the only thing is, the only thing that's going to cause change, and this is very extreme, but I do believe that this is possible, is death. And the reason why I say that, if you look at any other in our past protest that led to death, change happened. Now, I don't know why it has to go to that extreme, but if you look at, what's the guy's name? Nat Turner. Perfect example. Yes, he killed a lot of white folks. He killed a lot of women and children. He also freed a lot of slaves, and he got change in the community by what he did. Now, I'm not saying go out and do all these things, because obviously that is wrong, but we should find another alternative to change what we want, what we need to change. You know, I don't know if going to our representatives, if that is going to help, because everyone has their own agenda, and as American people, we don't know what that agenda is. And I feel like they should, any politician, whether you're running for district or president of the United States, you should have, to me, I feel like, you ever seen like NASCAR drivers where they wear those jackets with all their sponsors on them?
Yes.
That's how I kind of feel like our politicians should work. And that way, as Americans, we know, that's a good idea. We know as people, like, okay, this is who they're getting sponsored by. Do I want to go with this? Because then you start seeing the agenda. You start seeing, okay, he's going this way. Oh, I don't know if I want to do that. You know, that's what I think would be a good way to kind of change things, you know.
I think part of it is we have to, as far as who do you go to in the legal system to get some change, I think there's two types of change that we need. I think his self-healing change is so important, because we will never experience wholeness until we have some healing, and then this system has some healing. And I think that those two things have to work and be worked out at the same time. But then you also have to know who is in charge of what laws and who needs to make that change. And I think, and like is it Shayna again? Yeah. You know, what was saying earlier, our local politicians and our state politicians, they get to implement a lot of what is passed down. And every state implements it differently. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the law said. They all find a way to interpret and implement it their own way. And I think part of our issue, what we experience and what leads to some voter apathy, is that we also have a lot of scared black politicians. You know, you talk a lot of good talk behind doors and, oh, no one's gonna do anything to me. But then when you are in front of the people or in front of a camera, then you clam up. I wanted to say something else, but I wanted to keep your show clean.
Thank you. I appreciate
But anyway, but I think that's a big problem, is that we need a lot of local politicians that are actually for us, because they're the ones that get to implement the laws that are being put down through the federal government, as far as what we see.
Right. I was agreeing with you. And yeah, I agree. And I believe that starts with not just like trying to find people to represent us, but like investing in our education, so that there will be more people that will grow up to be those politicians and to be those people that can actually represent us. I feel like that they don't invest a lot in the, education, especially for college education. It costs so much with the high debt, like the $1 trillion debt that we're in. And
That's true.
exactly. So I feel like investing in the children will solve all the problems, honestly, because like they're going to grow up and they're going to do everything. Like they're going to be the people who represent us, and that's the only way that anything's going to change, because the laws that's what you got to change. It's just the laws. Anyone's going to follow the laws. I mean, I'm not saying that like everyone follows, but I'm saying that the laws are there to be followed, and the officers and all the policemen, they're there to implement the laws and make sure they're being followed. So if those laws are there for those companies, like I feel like the House of Representatives and the Senate have a lot of control over everything. I mean, I don't even like the House of Representatives and the Senate. They just control it. So therefore, there should be more people of color implemented in the House that can represent us like we're supposed to be represented.
I would like to introduce a special poet, Shane, with his original piece, Just Being Honest.
It's about time for our people to wake up, and I'm hoping that we focus. You don't have to be suited for another man's army to already know that you was already born a soldier. I want my kings and queens to wake up. It's time to switch this game. If you don't do it for yourself, do it for the ones who died before you, from the whips and chains. Because I know how you feel, especially in a messed up economy. You praying to God, he ain't saying nothing back, and on top of that, we living in poverty. They just like said, forget our 40 acres and gave us laws and apologies. And just because you see me dressed a certain way, don't give you a right to follow me. But now we gotta think logically. It's time to do what we was born to do. It's time to treat our kings like kings and our queens like queens, because I know I done scorned a few. I wanna be that little positive role model that a child can look up to. Because between racism and violence, these cops have been wilding. We so culturally divided, it's hard to keep quiet. If I'm here, you here. We all been shedding these tears. We could talk about all types of presidents, but they've been doing that for years. It don't matter about nothing. You can't change them until you change us. It's time to stand up, look in that mirror. It's start time to blame us. If we still fighting, they're gonna be fighting. If they riot, we riot. If they try it, we gonna try it. But it ain't about the consumer, it's about the ones who really buying it. So when they talk about we gonna change the world, I ain't even buying it. Am I wrong for feeling this way? I'm just being honest. You can sip on that, because here goes some more knowledge. Black versus black. You need to explore that, because we was kings and queens way before came over here. You really should explore them facts. The reason why our families are messed up is because we don't have a whole lot of consciousness. If a father then left us and a mother then neglect us, how you expect us to think positive? The streets became our home because we didn't have home to come home to. We so culturally divided, sometimes we don't know who to look up to. So sometimes you gotta do your own explanations and read a book for someone to look up to. If your father's not there, do your own facts. We tired of hearing our parents weren't there, man, we getting tired of that. So when these presidents come into play, we gotta move our own way. You can vote whoever you want to, but neither president gonna stop these police from killing us anyway. So to be honest with you, I've been ready for Judgment Day. So I could tell God, like, whatever that judgment say, I came to play, I came to lay, and I just hope that my people remain to stay. We could vote for whoever we want to, because they already got a whole lot of cover-ups. So now Trump trying to get in office, but they gave us Obama to shut us up. That's what they thought, because I'm just being honest.
In closing, let's give our guests a 20-second, 30-second moment to express how they feel about the political campaigning and endeavors that's going on. So we're going to start with you, Savon.
I feel like, you know, as far as like this political race, this presidential race right now as a whole, I feel like it's not, as far as right now, it's not really going as far as in our favor as of right now. You know, the change that black people want to see right now may not be in my lifetime, it might not be in your kid's lifetime, but hopefully we'll get there someday. You know, I try to, you know, one thing my father tells me is like, well, why do you keep putting stuff on Facebook and talking to people about it? Is because, you know, if we don't make people aware of what, you know, what black people like and just people of color want and need, you know, as far as equality and peace, you know, we'll never see that. Like, if we don't talk about it and make it aware. You know, I try to let everyone know about the injustices to try to help that, and then so people who, like, white people can help, you know, black people and people of color.
Very good. Thank you. Charmaine, your closing piece?
What we are experiencing right now in America as a democracy is horrible. We are not well informed, and the media keeps us from being able to know about other candidates that are just as good, including Jill Stein and Gary Johnson. And I think that we need to find a way to be able to diversify our opportunities and our options for who runs for the presidency and who we know about, so that we can really make an educated decision. I want to put an end to all of the propaganda, so that we can walk around in true knowledge. But until that decision is made for us, I think we have to make it for ourselves. So I encourage everyone to educate yourself, so that you can make your best decision this November. And if you can't get out in November, then vote early.
Good. Donnell?
Wow. Well, my last statement, I would say, for those who are paying attention and listening and watching this, your vote, your voice, and your decision matters. You have other options. You don't have to choose both evils, and you don't have to choose the lesser of the evil. You know, there's other people out there like Gerald Steen and Gary Johnson, like we talked earlier in the green room, and you have to do your own research. Know who you are as an American, and take that vote and use it, because these politicians, they're not entitled for your vote. They have to earn it. And as an American people, if we're living in a democracy, we have to use that and do it ourselves. So that would be my closing for that.
Okay, really good. Thank you, Donnell. And last, Shayna.
My closing statement would be, I believe that this is not a joke, this is not funny, this is not a game. This is real life. It affects your children, it affects your education, it affects everything around you as a person, as an individual. And just because it's not exactly affecting you right now, it could affect your children growing up. It could affect the many things. So therefore, it should not be taken lightly. It should not be taken as a joke. And I also do not believe that our votes right now should be split, because if our votes are split at this point, then there are so many Trump supporters. I mean, there are so many people that support Trump. And if we take our Hillary votes and we split them and vote for other people, then there's no way that we're going to win. And that just pulls us back. That's going to pull us back. That's not going to be any progress at all. At least Hillary is trying. Trump is not going to do anything for us as people. He doesn't represent our African American community as well as Hillary can. And all you have to do is look at her plans. All you have to do is educate yourself. All you have to do is look, and you will see clearly who was the best candidate.
I would like to thank our special guests for coming in today. This was a very much needed conversation, and to our homes, to yours, continue to stay dipped in bronze.